a retired homicide detective. I've interviewed thousands of people, from serial killers to ministers. Welcome to the interview room. Special presentation tonight with a new dear friend, Eric Bland, attorney from South Carolina. He's the lawyer for the family of Gloria Satterfield, and who was Alex Murdaugh's housekeeper, who died on the Moselle property under mysterious circumstances in 2018. Eric is a legal beagle and is recognized as an expert in his legal market malpractice, in legal malpractice. He was named a South Carolina super lawyer in both 2015, 2016, and 2017 for
2018, 2019, 20, 21, 22, and 23.
All of those years as well. And he is only one of two South Carolina attorneys, quite frankly, with this honor, and he's the host of Cup of Justice. So at the end of this and during this, get over to the Cup of Justice and subscribe. Typically Eric will average about 4,000 to 6,000 people in these lives here. So let's see if we can get those numbers up.
That's good. Yeah, let's do it.
So go check it out. You can find it on Spotify and, of course, anywhere you find podcasts. We've got his link below in our description. Man, oh man, I'm also honored to be a fellow guest with him on Nancy Grace and other shows. But
yeah,
so welcome.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor.
Yeah, well, it's my honor, to be honest with you. We appreciate you very, very much, and I know you've been one busy guy going from broadcast to broadcast. So I'm just glad we were able to carve out some time here for you. Okay, so let's jump. Let's get into it.
Sure. Let's hit it.
So you were very close to the Murdaugh trial here, going through here, Eric, right? I mean,
yeah.
You go ahead.
Yeah, I'm very close to the prosecutor, Creighton Wooders. We worked kind of hand in glove. Every day, believe it or not, from about 5 o'clock in the morning till 7 o'clock in the morning, we would tweet back and forth, text back and forth of different theories and different thoughts that I had. And from our listeners, we're fortunate to have a very highly rated podcast, and our listeners are pretty savvy, and they send in a lot of suggestions. And in some of those suggestions are a lot of gold. A lot of good stuff on timeline. I got a lot of stuff about, just basic stuff. Like if it's going to be a cartel hit, they bring their own guns. They don't come and steal the guns from the people that you're going to kill. Just a lot of common sense stuff and different things about setting up who was telling lies, according to Alex. And so I had a pretty good pipeline to the prosecution. And then I started going on a lot of shows because I was pro-prosecution. I believe that the prosecution was doing an effective job. I was battling every night, whether it was Mark Garagos or Sarah Ziri or Dershowitz or different people. You and I understand the soil of South Carolina because we live here, and you have to understand our soil and our juries. And if you're somewhere else in the country, it may not be apples to apples comparison when you look at how the prosecution was presenting their case as to what would be done in their jurisdiction. And I was an advocate of believing that the prosecution was being very effective in what they were doing. And of course, the defense had a lot of their acolytes and their sycophants around the country, high-powered lawyers that know Dick Harpootlian, that were saying what a great job, he was doing. And of course, Jim Griffin's a good friend of mine. And I thought Jim did a very good job at many different times in this trial. I was very disappointed in Dick's performance in this trial. I thought he came in like a lion, went out like a lamb. You saw basically could be the end of a career almost, the way that he, became irrelevant almost at the end of this trial. And I felt that our juries, Chris, are gun owners, and they understood a lot of the gun testimony and certain things about the guns. Like, I've litigated a lot of gun range cases representing homeowners that live around a gun range. And so I know that a 300 blackout sound travels 3 miles.
Yeah.
And shotguns can travel 2 miles. And Alex's kennels from the house at Mizell was 900 yards. So it was inconceivable that he wouldn't have heard that urban warfare that allegedly was taking place at the kennels, especially on a very quiet June night. So I felt that our jurors would, if this was in an urban area in Charleston, it could be a different verdict. They wouldn't have understood the long rifles and hunting and different things and kennels and dogs, and wouldn't have understood that if a stranger came on that property, those dogs would have been, going ballistic, barking and trying to alert their owners that somebody strange was on the property. So I was an advocate of the prosecution, and there wasn't too many like you or me out there, believe it or not, on these shows. Right. So Creighton felt that I was a messenger, and I was out there pushing it. And, quite frankly, I was worried because I thought it was going to be a hung jury. I never expected a guilty verdict. Certainly not that quick. That jury came back and didn't just say he was guilty. They said he was incredibly guilty. Yeah. You know what I mean? And it worked out. Wouldn't say I was prescient, but I felt like I chose the right horse. Let's put it that way.
You're a winner, and it shows again, that he placed. Curious though, when you've been representing Gloria Satterfield too, right? I mean, that whole situation, and I heard
not only Gloria but 6 other victims. I represented.
Really?
5 other financial victims.
I did not know that.
And then now we have 3 other statute of limitations victims. So in addition to those that he stole money from, there are those that he just didn't file their cases in time that the statute of limitations expired. And they had very valuable cases. And so we've had a couple recoveries on statute of limitations cases that he's missed. And in addition to, we represented Gloria Satterfield, the Plyler sisters, Jordan Jenks, who was one of his closest childhood friends that he stole $108,000 from, Gloria Satterfield's sister, who $28,000 was unaccounted for, and then Melverick Edwards, who was the father of Hakeem Pickney, that he was taken advantage of as well. Hakeem Pickney was the young boy who was
the African-American kid.
Who was a quadriplegic. He was a deaf football player, and he ended up a quadriplegic. So, I've been intricately involved in the Russell Lafitte matters, having sued Russell Lafitte, and he was convicted 2 months ago. Palmetto State Bank, the law firm, Corey Fleming and Corey Fleming's law firm. So I kind of knew the roadmap here, what was going to happen. You looked at the Russell Lafitte trial, and there was a lot, and I don't know if you followed that, but there were a lot of similarities in that trial as what took place in the Murdaugh trial. In that trial, Russell Lafitte chose to take the stand. He had very little contrition when he took the stand. He tried to blame it all on Alex and tried to make himself the victim. There were some juror problems where Judge Gergel had to dismiss 2 jurors. And once the jury was adequately seated, the verdict came back at 45 minutes. Well, the same thing happened here. Alex took the stand. The trial went from that scientific and technological trial to Alex. It's a referendum on Alex. And we lost the juror right before the jury retired. The jury went in, and within 3 hours, there was a verdict. And so I sent out a tweet today where I said, for all you young criminal defense lawyers out there, if there's ever an itch in you're getting an itch on your neck to put your client on the stand, take a lesson from Alex Murdaugh and Russell Laffitte. There's a reason why people don't put their clients on the stand in circumstantial evidence cases. Sometimes you have to do it, obviously, in a self-defense case. If there's 10 witnesses that witnessed you shooting somebody, and you have to go on the stand to explain why you did it because it's self-defense. But in this kind of case where there was not a lot of direct evidence at all to link Alex to these murders, I think it was just an incredibly foolhardy act to put him on the stand, to think that a con artist like him would be able to manipulate and make 12 jurors that have 24 ears and 24 eyes believe that you're not lying now.
Did you think, Eric, that, they took a chance, or was it really, Murdaugh who was pushing, hey, I'm going to get up there whether you like it or not?
Well, if you listen to Jim, I was on the night of the sentencing. Jim gave a interview to Chris Cuomo. He was on the first half hour and I was on the last half hour. Mm-hmm. And Jim said that they were 100% behind the decision to put him on the stand. In fact, Harpootlian in the press conference said, yeah, it was our recommendation because, one, they felt he had nothing to lose, mm-hmm. with all the backstop of these financial crimes. Mm-hmm. And most likely he was going to be convicted of all of them. Certainly the Satterfield case is an absolute, even a first-year lawyer can beat Harpootlian and Griffin on the Satterfield case because there's 3 checks. They go to the fake Forge account. He takes them, and then he liquidates them into cashier's checks and gives them to cousin Eddie. So,
and that's next in the pipeline, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it's coming. And so, I think they thought to themselves, what do we have to lose? Well, you had everything to lose. Look, I didn't hear one person in 6 weeks, Chris, that said Alex was innocent. Mm-hmm. I heard everybody say, I think he did it, or he knows who did it, was involved, or was there, or was the shooter. But some people said, and a significant number, that the government hasn't proved its case. Right. That's what kind of was the common theme. And then obviously you had others like me that said, I think he's guilty and I think they've proven their case. I never thought there would be a not guilty verdict. Never in a million years. Right. I don't think you did. Did you think there would be a not guilty verdict?
No, I thought worst case scenario, they were going to hang.
They were going to hang. So, so I think Dick, thought about it, and that's the decision they made. But they made some incredibly poor decisions. Mm-hmm. They opened the door to the Labor Day debacle, the Labor Day shooting debacle. Yeah. They brought Alex's character in on their own when they asked all of Paul's friends, is Alex a great guy? Is he a great father? Is he a great husband? And then that opened up the cross-examination. Well, how well do you really know Alex? Do you know that Alex stole $8 million from these clients? Did you know that Alex lied to you about being at the kennel? So, I like to say that Alex is a 90-10 guy. I don't know if you were on a show when I said that. 90% of the time, great father, great husband, great friend, jovial, great hunter. Everybody loves him. But there's a 10% time that he's a monster, right, that he is a true psychopath. And whether his family knew some of that and didn't want to confront it, or they may not have known at all. Look, cousin Eddie would have been interesting to see on the witness stand, but nobody would put him on because, look, he was Alex's dark horse guy. He bought his drugs for him. He laundered $2.2 million worth of checks from 2018 to 2022. And he was involved in whatever you want to call that Labor Day shooting. It certainly wasn't a suicide attempt. For me, it was nothing more than to try to divert law enforcement away from Alex being a target for the killings of Maggie and Paul, so that he could say, look, there's some wacko out there that's trying to shoot me.
Totally.
But Alex, I said this 2 years ago. I said, Alex is a modern day monster, and everybody gave me a raft of crap for that. Okay. Like, how could you go there? All he is a thief. There's nothing to say that, a liar doesn't make a murderer. It was interesting that Judge Newman called him a monster on Friday at the
That was a very interesting choice of words, for sure.
He called him a monster. It was one of the most personal, riveting allocution I've ever heard by a judge. And I'm sure you've heard your fair share of cases that you've been involved in. He made it so personal against Alex because, don't forget, he lost his son 8 weeks ago. Judge Newman did. He was 40. His son, Brian Newman, was 41 years old and died unexpectedly.
Yep.
So he loses a child unexpectedly. Alex took a child. And I think that really affected Judge Newman. Judge Newman also has been affected by Alex's conduct. Remember, I argued the bond hearing when Alex was charged on his first financial crime at Gloria Satterfield. Creighton Wooders recommended $200,000 bond. Dick Harpootlian suggested 50. I got up and I told Judge Newman, there's 300 cameras in this courtroom. The whole world's watching.
Right.
He's polluted our profession. He's polluted our state. You have to send a message. And he denied him bond. And then at the second bond hearing in front of Judge Lee, he got a $7 million bond. It was reduced, but no 10%. So Judge Newman let it known from the start that he was not enamored with Alex and not with Dick as well. And so in that sentencing, he kind of took the robe off, and then he was a lawyer and said, I don't like what you've done to our legal profession. I don't like the way you betrayed your clients. Then he kind of took that off and said, as a man, I'm offering you a chance to tell this court, show some kind of contrition, some kind of explanation for why you did what you did. Look, he said, I've never had a client stand before me and say, look, I did it. I killed him. But you could have shown some kind of remorse for lying, a pathological liar that you've done to your family, to your friends, and turn around to your son, Buster, and say, I lied to you for two whole years. Then he even unzipped himself even further and said, I don't like what you've done to Sled in this courtroom for the last 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And then he got very personal and said, when you're alone in your cell and you're alone with your soul, every night you're going to be visited by Maggie and Paul, but not in the way that you think. They're going to come and visit you, and they're going to haunt you. I mean, it was riveting, Chris. It was riveting. And Alex, I don't know. And that's why I say the lawyering, because every lawyer tells their client in that situation, you better ask for mercy. You better apologize for wasting the court's resources, at least to prove for 2 years that you were at the kennel, or on the Labor Day shooting that you brought a sketch artist in and wasted the money on a sketch artist when you knew it was cousin Eddie. Something that you could throw a bone at the judge where you're admitting some culpability, not to the murders. But he just stuck his guns and he said, look, I'm innocent. And he never said nothing more.
He didn't lose a beat.
He didn't shed a tear.
Didn't miss a beat. Yeah.
Didn't miss a beat. And the judge whacked him with LWOP'd him and gave him life without parole.
Yep.
So, the mistakes of the lawyers, look, on my podcast, you're going to hear tomorrow, I got like weepy, emotional when I talked about Jim Griffin. That's a guy that really, I'm a lawyer. So I'm looking at it from a lawyer standpoint. He gave such a great defense to Alex. He did all the heavy legal arguments. He did all the heavy cross-examination. You could tell he did all the research. He was wearing his heart on his sleeve. Harpootlian was, he has antiquated trial skills. In his day, he was as great can be. Mm-hmm. But it's an antiquated skill when you try to be that sarcastic in a courtroom and that flippant and a little bit disorganized. These are modern day trials that require a lot of technology skills. Today people get their information in short bites, whether it's a 140 character Twitter bite or it's a quick text. And so the juries, they don't like the old theatrics, although they did like the theatrics of John Metters in his rebuttal closing, which was like a Sunday sermon.
Oh, it was brilliant.
But Dick made 4 real strategic errors that I think really stuck with him in this trial. The first was in his opening statement when he said it was his honor to represent Alex Murdaugh. No lawyer would ever use those words to a lawyer that has stolen $8 million. A lawyer would say, look, I'm representing Alex because I think he's innocent of these charges. But to say it was his honor to represent a guy that stole $8 million from needy clients, that was a foot foul. Then for Special Agent Worley, he asked her, what is so special about you, Special Agent Worley? I thought it was a very demeaning comment to females. And females played a lot of role in this trial as witnesses. Then to that beautiful woman who looked like Kate Jackson, who had the Faraday bag, did not have the Faraday bag, but put Maggie's phone in the paper bag. He said, you tossed it in there like you were holding a can of pork and beans. Right. And that also, I was there during that day, Chris. You could see some of the female juries looked at him with disdain. And then the final touch was pointing the gun at the prosecutors. And these are jurors that we practice gun safety. We're all gun holders. You were a gun holder, I presume. Yep. I am. We would never, ever, ever point a gun at anybody and then joke and say it was tempting. And look, somebody made a decision that Dick wasn't going to deliver that closing argument. And I don't know whether that was Alex saying, I want Jim to do it. Look, Dick tried to get the judge to bifurcate it so that he could do half the closing argument. And the judge said, no, I've never done that before. And I think what you saw is almost the end of a Dick Harpootlian's career. Sure, he'll go back to the Senate, but I can't see him handling this type of case again.
Well, I remember you commenting when we were on Nancy Grace's show about, I had never seen a defense attorney walk in the well that many times in between the expert and the state while they were testifying. I just thought that was, completely unprofessional at the time.
There's a 2013 interview that Dick did where he said that's what he does. He said that he called it urinate all over the courtroom. And so he picks his spots and he goes and he urinates and he throws the lawyers off. John Metters used to say that he's I call him a 44 caliber smoke machine and also a 44 caliber quote machine. Quote. So John Metters said, in his closing, you heard that Dick lights all these fires and smoke fires in the courtroom. And he does that because then he can point to him and say, that's reasonable doubt. And there's your reasonable doubt. And there's your reasonable doubt. It was an interesting thing. I think the defense did as good a job as they can with Alex. And I think the prosecution did as good a job as they could with the case that Alex gave them a very messy case. It was the nastiest bowl of spaghetti and meatballs I've ever seen. It was messy, Chris. That's all you can say. Yeah. And I know that everybody wanted them, to make it just about the murder case because they felt that the financial crimes were too remote in time, or is he really going to go from being a financial defendant in the killing his wife and son to being a murder defendant? That doesn't seem logical. But you know what? The reason that motive is not an element of murder is because sometimes the motive of a killer is imperfect. For you and I, who are rational, or you're more rational than me.
Well, you're pretty funny too,
Right. But for you and I, whatever reason that Alex may have had in his head to kill Maggie and Paul, we would say, are you kidding me? That's why you chose? Like sometimes in a bar, some guy will look at another guy's wife and the wife will say something to the husband like, that guy's a good looking guy. And then he goes home and the husband will kill the wife for that. And you're like, really? That's what you did it for? But sometimes murder is problem solving. A killer decides he's got a problem and how is he going to solve it? And I think what really backfired on the defense was saying that Alex was paranoid when they said he was paranoid about SLED when they came to him. And that's why he started telling lie after lie after lie, because he was paranoid from drugs. But I think the jury used that paranoid to say maybe he was paranoid and that caused him to kill Maggie and Paul. The paranoia. I would have never used that word, Chris. I would have said maybe he was scared. Maybe he was afraid or in fear. But when you use that word paranoid, rational behavior goes out the window. And now you're being driven by not rational thought, but paranoid thought.
Right.
Scary.
What does that mean, right? Yeah. I mean, and the normal person always asks that question. Well, how do we define that? What does that mean? And
what does it mean when you're paranoid?
Right, exactly. And that's exactly, you're 100% right. I agree.
I don't think normal people can function every day if they're operating in a state of paranoia.
No, you and I have seen those guys for years. I mean, I hooked up a heroin addict who was a taxi driver for over 20 years. And when I looked at him, his pupils were just a couple of pins. And I just said, I said, dude, you're under the influence of some type of opioid. And he looked at me and I said, let me see your arms. And he pulls his shirt up and, there's tracks going all the way to LA. And I looked at it and I said, dude, how long have you been slamming? He looks right in my eyes and he goes, 20 years. I said, you're a full functioning opioid addict. Okay, let's figure this out here.
But I think they went too far with the opioids. I think that Alex was a drug user.
I agree.
But maybe not a capital D drug addict. Because when they said it's a $50,000 a week habit, I went and I talked to some pharmacologists who said the street value of an opioid tablet is anywhere from $10 to $15 a tablet, which will require him to take over 300 and some tablets a day. And I had talked about with Creighton, go get yourself 4 jars of Tylenol, 100 pill Tylenol, and dump them right on in front of Alex, in front of the jury, and give him a glass of water and say, I want to see you take 333 of these tablets. Let me see you get them.
A great visual, man. That would have blown.
And I also thought that the state may have made a mistake of not putting a pharmacologist on as rebuttal to say it would be physically impossible for somebody to live to take 300 opioid tablets a day. One, it would suppress your cognitive thought process. No one could drive. Alex would have been in car wrecks. He would have fallen asleep in court. Partners would have seen him in a state of, lethargy. The other thing
on the nod half the time.
The other thing that came out is Randolph knew about this drug use, but the other partners didn't. And I'm anxious to see if some plaintiffs come out of the woodwork to say, hey, Alex was handling my case when he was a drug addict and your brother, who's a partner in that firm, knew about it. The other problem I saw was they reached too far. They started making a lot of what ifs. Like, if you're a defendant, you only get so many yeah buts. Yeah, I did it, but yeah, I lied, but yeah, this happened, but yeah, I was sleeping, but oh yeah, the air conditioning was on and the TV was on and that's why I didn't hear it. When Jim in his closing argument said, Paul was a little detective and it's quite possible that he found pills and that he went and hunted down the drug distributor of Alex and confronted him. And maybe that drug distributor decided he was going to kill Paul for confronting him. But again, those guys don't come to your house without a gun.
No.
They don't come to your house to steal your guns to kill you with your gun. They got their own, Chris.
Oh, you know, I don't know if you know the totality of my career, but it was in Southern California on the border. And so I mean, I can't tell you how many cartel hits I did.
Right.
And so, yeah, you're 1,000% right. And plus, they wouldn't have left him alive. They would have
They would have tortured Maggie and Paul in front of him and then killed him. Right. And they knew he was there.
Everybody knew that. Yeah.
They knew he was there.
Yep. Very interesting. You are a fascinating lawyer. So I have a question. You've been in the community, you know, forever, and obviously, you know, a legal beagle, and you've won every award possible. Before Alec got into all of this stuff in the legal community, really, how did everybody, his peers, look at him? Did they just kind of knew he was shady from the get-go, or how did that unfold?
He wasn't well known.
Oh, interesting.
This firm is like a phantom.
Interesting.
If you go to a roster meeting in Columbia or Charleston or Greenville, you would never ever see lawyers from their firm. They practiced where they lived. The reason that they were so successful is they live in that community, and that community never, ever grew. Remember, because they broke CSS Railroad and Walmart wouldn't move there. And we had to get the venue law changed in 2005. You know, that firm has 10 to 15 eight-figure settlements or verdicts a year. They never left their county. And so everybody knew of Johnny Parker and Ronnie Crosby and a little bit of Mark Ball because they have really good trial reputations. But Alex wasn't a master trial attorney. He was a wheeler dealer. So nobody really had a great knowledge of them. The firm was kind of like Motley Rice. Motley Rice didn't practice in South Carolina. They were all over the world. Mm-hmm. So it was a mysterious type of firm, and very effective and very good lawyers. I mean, Johnny Parker's a phenomenal lawyer, and Ronnie Crosby is one of the best products liability lawyers in our state. So, the world learned about them. I mean, I never knew that Alex's father and grandfather and great-grandfather ran that, the prosecutor's office. But I learned quickly, when I got involved, I sent a letter off to Corey Fleming. I got this phone call from the Satterfields, and at the time, they only thought there was a $500,000 settlement based on Mandy Matney's article in the paper. And I'm not a lawyer that sends Hallmark cards. When I write a letter, it pushes you back up against the wall. But in this case, I just couldn't believe that a lawyer would steal $500,000. I mean, I've had lawyers inflate their fees and inflate expenses and, do some hanky panky, but nobody ever steals $500,000. And so my first letter was very benign. Look, I'm sure there's a misunderstanding here to Corey Fleming. Please tell us, you got the money, it's in your escrow account or whatever. And I didn't get a response. So then that was a Friday. The Monday.
That was a red flag to you, I bet.
Oh, yeah. Monday, I didn't write a Hallmark card. I basically said, you got 3 hours to tell me where this money is, or I'm going to the bar.
Yeah,
and I didn't hear. I went to the bar, and then I decided to file a lawsuit because then I would have subpoena power. And the subpoena power enabled me to go to all the insurance companies and all the different lawyers to get the settlement documents. And that's when I learned that it was $4.3 million. And I'm telling you, just stunned. I mean, to steal $4.3 million from a member of the family, basically. Remember, Gloria was so much more than a housekeeper. She helped raise these kids. She worked for Miss Libby. She worked for John Marvin. She worked for Randolph, and she helped raise Paul and Buster. And to steal $4.3 million was extraordinary. And this will tell you how dark Alex is. So he got $3.5 million of the $4.3 million, and Gloria died. And one of the brothers you saw Tony on the witness stand, but the other brother, Brian, is a vulnerable adult, has some mental incapacity.
Okay.
And he was living in the mother's trailer, a $17,000 trailer. The bank foreclosed on the trailer and sent the foreclosure papers to Alex. So Alex is sitting on $3.5 million of their money. And he let that bank foreclose on the trailer, and Brian was pushed out on the street. And
cool.
Only a monster could do that. Only a monster.
That's cool.
And so I learned as this case went on of this lineage, this dynasty that existed of the Murdaughs. And it got crazy. Like when I subpoenaed the probate court file, a Murdaugh responded to my subpoena in the probate court. When I called 911, when I subpoenaed 911 for the phone call for Gloria Satterfield, a Murdaugh answered the subpoena. So they're like cockroaches, man. They're everywhere down there.
Were they stacking juries? Were they stacking juries?
Well, you heard Mark Tinsley make a really good revelation when he got on the stand outside the presence of the jury when the judge was determining whether he was going to let the 404B in. He said, I had a discussion with Alex at the Trial Lawyers Association meeting. He said, Alex came up to me and said, yo, Bo, what are you doing, man? Are you coming after me personally? Look, you're not coming after me personally. And he said, Alex, yes, I am. And he then said to him, and if you try to manipulate this jury, I'm going to sue Maggie and Buster and move the case to Buford.
Right.
That's Mark Tinsley saying, I know firsthand that Alex touched juries. That was a very telling admission that Mark Tinsley made when he testified, that he knew that Alex was a jury tamperer.
Yeah, and that's when he said, I'll burn your house down.
He said, I'll burn your house down.
Figuratively, right.
And let me tell you something. Mark Tinsley is a terrorist. If you let him in your house, he will blow your shit up. I mean, he's that good. I'm telling you, he is that good of a lawyer.
I love it. I love it. This is great stuff, Cheryl. And by the way, we got 7,100 people in here tonight so far.
Oh, that's awesome.
So we're cooking here. This is great stuff.
You're cooking with gas.
Okay, you're cooking. I love you, buddy. I mean, this is, and by the way, mods, let's put Cup of Justice, put the link into the chat here. So everybody get over there and to Eric's podcast and make sure you.
Yeah, we're number 18 in the world right now in true crime, and we're number 78 in all podcasts together. We have anywhere from 500 to 500,000 to 800,000 listeners.
So there you go, guys. There, Miss Sophia put it up already.
Thank you, Miss Sophia.
Go.
So, you know, I mean, Alex ran the show down there. You know, you saw, I mean, how vulgar and repugnant was it that the badge carrying that he did, you know, in the hospital to have the badge hanging out, and then the blue lights. And then the chief got up there and said, I never gave him permission to put blue lights on a car. I mean, you're talking about the guy's like a mall cop or something. You know what I'm saying?
Art.
Yeah. I mean, it was disgusting. You know, there's a true story. Well, there's a rumor that somebody said is really true, that he flashed it to get a table at the IHOP.
Yeah, you know, that one surprised me, right? I mean, it just in terms of his rush for power, but and you know, that is an insult to everybody in the industry. You and I both take oath. We took oaths, you know, to defend the Constitution and do it correctly and do it right and tell the truth. And, you know, no.
But I don't have the balls, nor did I go through to carry a badge or a blue light. I'm not law enforcement, okay? No, I have the right to carry a gun. I have a CWP. I am an officer of the law, but I don't have the right to carry a badge, okay? That's just so over the top. it has the stench of power and privilege. That's what this whole trial had for me. You know, just the way Alex comported himself in court. Look, he chewed gum. He chewed sunflower seeds. He touched physically his son, his sister, and John Marvin when they were sitting close.
Yep.
If you did that in Richland County, a deputy would grab your arm, okay? The way the family in court, look, I have no problem that they believe that their brother and their father is innocent. No problem at all. But that state of South Carolina were the champions of Maggie and Paul, and nobody sat on their side. That state spent over millions and millions of dollars in the prosecution to vindicate those deaths. And for Dick Harpootlian to say, after the verdict, the family is more believing that he's innocent than before the verdict. Look, you got to question. It's not for me to tell Buster how he should feel about his father or Lynn or John Marvin or whatever. But when they're alone in their bed, certainly they have to ask themselves questions. Do I really know my father and my brother? How well do I really know him? I didn't know he was this much of a drug addict, supposedly. I certainly didn't know that he was this kind of thief. And he lied to his living son for 2 years almost about seeing his mother and his brother 5 minutes before their death. You know, for me, that's kind of sealed the deal. But for me, what did it for me was he took 42 minutes to call Buster, his only living child, after he came home, and he called 911. He made 12 phone calls, including text messages. He even called CB Rowe to tell him, fix the sunflower trees. And then he got around to calling Buster. Now, if it was me, the first call I would make would be to Buster, my only living son, and say, son, your mother and your brother were murdered. There is a killer on the loose. Wherever you are, do not come home. Go to the police station immediately and get yourself protected. The other thing is, I still would be hugging my wife and my son. And if you came near me and tried to get my arms off my wife and son, I'd kill you, Chris.
Yeah. Yeah.
He should have had blood all over him. When those police came, the blood should have been all over him from hugging his wife and kid and screaming that they could have heard him in Columbia.
Yeah. And you know, when you see that first body camera, I don't know if you caught it or not, but right when the first officer gets out of the car, you see downrange the kennels.
Yeah.
Guess where he's standing? He's standing exactly where the trajectory of that.
I didn't catch that.
That line goes. So we'd call that a familiarity memory in homicide, right? So why did he go to that spot? Because he was familiar with that spot because it was a traumatic situation where, not for him in terms of, you know, him pulling the trigger, but there's a high probability that's the geographic area where he started to shoot. My theory has always been he had the shotgun, levels the shotgun, takes Paul out. And I thought he had the blackout on a sling or something to where he could come up right away. So, you know, he's got both guns.
Well, he put him in the golf cart. He brought him down from the house in the golf cart.
Yeah, I agree with you.
And they said that each shotgun had 2 shells in it. So he shot 2 shells and the shotgun was out, and he kills Maggie with the blackout. But don't forget, the other telling thing for me was, you know, when you call 911, the minute you dial 911, it begins to start recording. And so there was total silence on the phone until they pick it up. When they pick it up, obviously he was highly emotional.
Right.
Now, if it was a normal person and you just came up and saw your wife and kid, when you dial 911, you're going to be hyperventilating. You're going to be screaming, oh my God, you're going to scream. Answer the damn phone. You're not going to have total silence. And then the other crazy thing was he's highly emotional as he's talking to the officer, and he's crying, he's wailing. And then a fire rescue guy goes right behind him, and he stops dead, turns around and says, "Hey, Bo, how you doing?" Then he turns around and starts crying again. You remember that?
Yeah. It was classic. It's like, yeah, okay, this guy's not feeling any emotion. Catch this question real fast. Can you tell about Poot and Ronnie Crosby? Looked like RC was being attacked for disloyalty.
Yeah. Ronnie will never forget that. You know, Dick and Ronnie have known each other a long time. And Ronnie Crosby is a good man. Listen to me. Ronnie Crosby gave the eulogy to Paul at his funeral.
Yeah.
He was extremely close with Paul. And for Dick Harpootlian to suggest that you're coming in here and lying because you had to pay money for Alex's theft went so over the top. And Ronnie Crosby said, look, there's no question that I was angry, but I thought it was just so poetic when he said, but you can't walk through life with that kind of anger. You have to get over it. And I thought Dick crossed the line. I thought what we saw from Dick is frustration. Look, I could say a lot of things about Dick Harpootlian, but he was a 74-year-old man that slung it hard for 7 weeks, which was really admirable, plus all the time that he prepared. There's not many 74-year-old guys that could go in there and sling the steel like he did in that courtroom. So I will give him props for that. But he definitely was wearing out at the end of the trial, and it really showed when he crossed the line with Ronnie Crosby. And I don't think Ronnie's ever going to forget that.
Yeah, that'll go down.
And I don't think Ronnie's going to ever forgive Randy Murdaugh for knowing that he was using drugs and let him come into the firm. It wouldn't surprise me. It just would not surprise me that within 6 months, Randy Murdaugh is not in that firm anymore.
Yeah, I was going to say, now what's going to be the blowback on all of this with the legal community?
Well, I think we've, it's kind of like Shawshank Redemption. Andy Dufresne went through 500 yards of the raw sewage, but came out clean on the other side. I think we are.
Love that movie, by the way.
I think potentially we're going to come out clean on the other side. Look, Judge Newman is America's judge. He wasn't a Lance Ito. He wasn't the guy in Florida in the Anna Nicole Smith. He didn't make the trial about him. He was reserved. He was respectful to all parties. He didn't have, enemies to punish and winners to reward. He treated everybody the same. He was Solomon-like in his disposition. And I think the lawyers looked great to the nation. There was an incredible amount of preparation, incredible amount on both sides. So I think Walterboro looked good. We didn't have any rioting other than the bomb scare. There wasn't any major incidents. Nobody was kicked out of the courtroom. Everybody was safe. I was safe. I felt safe walking around town. So I think we showed the nation how you put on a trial that's the trial of the century. So, look, what is going to happen? I think as a result of some of the issues that I brought up about Judge Mullen and how the Gloria Satterfield matter was dealt with off the record in chambers, I think a lot of that's going to change. I think now if you have a wrongful death settlement, I believe it's going to take place with a court reporter, and I think you're going to have orders that are going to be filed with the court. The stranglehold that the Murdaugh firm had down there, I think, is gone. I just felt the freshest breath of air yesterday morning. I tweeted it out that I've had in so long. And I think the community there is going to have a fresh breath of air. I think the justice system is going to be less fixed by the firm. Look, the firm does great work. No question about it. They pay for funerals kids graduate from high school, they send gifts, they do picking for law enforcement, and they do everything right that you want to do to ingratiate yourself to a community. But I think that community is going to look to other lawyers. They're going to look to Mark Tinsley. They'll look to Justin Bamberg. And it wouldn't surprise me if other lawyers decide, you know what, we're going to start sending up a shingle in Hampton County. So I think the Murdaugh mystique is done. It wouldn't have been done if he was not held not guilty or possibly with a hung jury. But I just don't see that name carrying any weight anymore. I don't think people are going to walk to the other side of the street. I don't think they're going to walk in fear anymore. That's just my thought.
What was your takeaway when Newman was talking about so many people have been put on the death and given the death penalty in lesser offenses by his family?
Yeah, I think he was sending a message. He
Yeah.
was sending a message that there were a lot of blacks that have been killed for less.
That's what I felt too. Yep.
And whether he wanted the death penalty or not, look, I was very glad that they didn't seek death penalty, because it invokes so many different prophylactic protections for a defendant. The state has to pay for a defense. There has to be a death penalty qualified jury. There's so many more hearings that take place. The scrutiny after a death penalty trial and the death is given, makes it years and years and years. Look, I believe in the death penalty under the right circumstances, but not in a circumstantial evidence case. I do not. And quite frankly, the thought of Alex being in the big house for the next 40 years as a child killer, that's more attractive to me than him being able to off himself, with a lethal squad, a firing squad now in South Carolina. The thought that, when I'm 80 years old, if God lets me live long, that Alex is still pulling his leg in a prison, I'll have a smile on my face.
Think of the visual, right? When he walked through those doors to get processed and medical check and everything. And just think of when his jacket hit the first, trustee who has his jacket, helping him, throwing the clothes at him and everything, before he goes over to medical. You and I both know the reality of that. That word was in that prison long before Alec got there.
No question.
And how many of those inmates
are waiting for him?
Yeah. Hey, this guy's grandfather or this guy's father
put me here.
Put me here. Or
put my dad there, or put my uncle there.
Yeah. So I think it's your point. I agree with it. It's going to be it's not going to be the country club that he was hoping for if they would have done the federal stuff. And and I heard you mention that one time, if they would have done the federal stuff. Tell everybody what that would have been like if he would have.
The reason that there hasn't been any federal charges is because if they were brought, Harpootlian would have marched Alex down to court the very next day and said he'll plead straight up to whatever you want to give him, so that he could go do his time in somewhere like Seymour Johnson Federal Air Force Base prison, where it's a minimum security type prison, because then it's a financial crime. But now that he's convicted of a violent crime, the most violent of all crimes, he's doing it in the maximum security prison. The federal government is still there just in case, as a backstop. They can bring bank fraud charges, money laundering charges, conspiracy charges. They already drug conspiracy charges. And by the way, he hasn't reported $8 million worth of theft income, so they can nail him on an Al Capone failure on income tax if they wanted to. But there'll come a day in the next couple of years where we won't talk about Alex Murdaugh anymore. But we have Russell Lafitte's sentence coming up. We're going to have the Satterfield trial coming up. We're going to have Corey Fleming's trial coming up. So the Murdaugh mess is going to be with us for a while. So you and I are going to be friends for a while talking about this. But you got to clean out the sewer. The sewage has got to be clean so you can get fresh water flow through it.
What do you think about the Stephen Smith deal?
I'm very close to Sandy Smith. I do think that he was murdered. I do not believe that he was hit by a car. You know, they opened an investigation into Stephen's death and the Gloria Satterfield's death just at about the same time. And I'm not sure if they did it to put pressure on Alex in a way. There hasn't been a connection made with Alex to that murder. The only connection seems to be that Sandy Smith said that Randolph Murdaugh arrived on the scene and that Randolph called her on the phone and said that I would be willing to represent you. Now, I don't know if there's any other connection. And certainly SLED has not told Sandy Smith what has transpired over the past 2 years. And quite frankly, I don't know if they even had the manpower to be looking in this over the last 2 years because they've been so busy, you know, prosecuting this, just, the trial of the century.
You know, when I heard Mark Keel's press conference, and Mark and I are friends. I've been to many conferences with Mark and, had dinner with him on numerous occasions. And when I heard him say, anybody who has been aiding and abetting Alec in any way, shape, or form, he basically left it open as if we're coming. Mm-hmm. What was your read on that?
We'll see. We'll see. The state has spent a lot of money. There are a lot of other criminals out there that they need to be focusing on. One of the things that I was disappointed about was that they gave him precedence over this murder case. They chose to charge the financial crime cases first. And so I believe in first in, first out. So you charge Gloria Satterfield first. She's a victim. I personally wouldn't have risked not getting a conviction on the murder case. I would have tried the financial crimes first, gotten a conviction, and then tried the murder case, because you could have ended up with an OJ situation where he got off of the murder and then you end up convicting him on something else, in a way to make up for it. But look, it worked out for the state. I was proven wrong. But, we have a lot of guys that have been sitting in jail that haven't gotten their murder case. So someone asked me, well, do you think they're going to expedite his appeal? And the answer is no. I think any dispensation that Dick Harpootlian has gotten or Alex has gotten in our court system is over with. And I think they're going to put that appeal to the back of the line, and it's going to be a slow burn.
Yeah, he's going to. I'm curious with Gloria. I noticed just in a couple of pictures that I've seen, her feet are actually at the going the opposite direction of the alleged tumble down the stairs. What's that all about?
Well, I mean, look, I've been there and I've been to those steps. That was on Netflix, and
that's
it's a double flip. If you fall from the top, you'll flip and then flip again. So somebody keeps that, people ask me all the time, do you think she was murdered? I do not.
Okay.
And the reason I say that is I don't think anybody who would try to murder somebody would let that person get in an ambulance in a semi-conscious state with the possibility that they would wake up at the hospital and say, hell no, dogs didn't push me. Human hands did. I think they would have finished her off. I think if Paul or somebody else pushed Maggie down the stairs and Alex came home knowing now that Alex is this kind of psychopath, I think Alex would have finished her off. I just don't believe they would let her get in an ambulance. You wouldn't do that. If you push somebody down the stairs to try to kill her, would you call 911 and then put her in an ambulance? No, you'd finish her off.
Yeah, I mean, but if we, remember all behavior has a purpose. And if we look at this, and I don't know enough about the facts. I mean, you're obviously the go-to guy here for all of that for years. And so I don't want to step out of my lane here, but I'm curious as to with his behavior in relationship to how he tried to pull this off. If it was, I don't think he's involved in it, evident of the fact that, Maggie and Paul are both on the 911 call. But I'm just wondering, was there something behind the curtain somewhere that gave any
Paul
indication
loved her.
of foul play?
Paul loved her, man. He really did. And I don't think Maggie would have killed her. I just don't think Maggie had that kind of malice in her. Sled his ass twice to exhume the body. And obviously the family said they agreed, because if they didn't, they just go to court and get a court order. Sure. And we're going to be there when they do it. I don't know if they ever will. I really, the family doesn't want that kind of can of whoop ass opened up. This has been very emotional for them, for Tony to get on the stand. I mean, and Dick Harpootlian called him a kid and a boy, and the guy's 34 years old. I mean, come on, man. And then he got in his face and, said, you really didn't think there was going to be, were you involved in this scam? And it's just the way he treated Harpootlian with respect. There's actually a picture, I hugged Tony before he went on the stand. And when he came back, he looked over at Harpootlian and just glared at him, and after he was done, I said to Dick, Dick said, I'm an excellent lawyer. So I thanked Dick. I said, Dick, thank you for the compliment, but I really didn't appreciate the way you talked to my client. So here's the other thing. Alex says, well, I'm here admitting to these financial crimes, but don't forget, Chris, on every one of these financial crimes that he's been charged with for the last 2 years, you know what he's done? Pled not guilty. He didn't come. It was only when the devil was at the door last Thursday.
I rest my case on behavior.
He pled not guilty in every one of these cases. So don't tell me this guy's telling the truth, man. He's like LL Cool J. LL Cool J's got a line that says he lies about the lies he's lying about. I mean, he lies when you don't even have to lie.
Yeah. Home fries. We used to call them home fries.
Yeah.
So, okay. What about Mark in Mallory Beach? What's the status on that? If you know, where's it go?
Mano between Mark and Parker Convenience Store. Parker guy's got more money than God.
Yeah.
And he dislikes Mark and Mark dislikes him. And Parker's got 8 sets of lawyers and he is self-insured, and that's going to trial. And I'm telling you, Mark Tinsley is a terrorist. And I think Mark's got a tough claim. If you really want to get down to it, Parker Convenience is going to say, look, our cashier got the driver's license. Buster and Paul look exactly alike. They're redheads. Except Buster's 6'3", 240 pounds, and Paul's 5'8", 160 pounds. So she missed that. But she put the card into the reader, and the reader said it's a valid driver's license. So Parker's going to say she did all that was reasonable. Mark is going to say, no, you can't do that. That people use other people's driver's licenses. So the question is, Parker's trying to change the law because in South Carolina, we have joint contribution among tortfeasors. And that's a legal term that essentially means that if you have 8 defendants, any one defendant could get hit with the verdict and he's got to pay the entire verdict. And if he wants to get contribution from the other defendants, then he's got to sue them. What Parker wants is for the jury to allocate fault, to say, okay, the Murdaughs, because they were bad parents who didn't parent Paul properly and put proper boundaries on Paul, they were negligent in their supervision of Paul and giving him a boat and giving him the right to get alcohol. Buster gave him the driver's license. He should have some culpability. They went to 4 bars that night. So each one of those bars should have culpability. And then if you want to hold Parker Convenience Store 7% liable, then they should only pay 7% of the total verdict and not 100% if it's a $30 million verdict. So he's trying to get the law changed. It's not going to change. So that case is going to go to trial, and it's going to be an amazing trial. And I'm telling you, Mark Tinsley is a dynamite lawyer.
Yeah, he seemed like he'll light the elephant grass on fire, and you'll be running to the other end.
Yeah.
Stay in front of it. So this is a question for you. Is it possible Alex law firm could be held accountable for the lack of oversight on Alex theft, i.e. the Satterfield case?
Well, I've recovered over $7.5 million for the Satterfields to date.
Good for you, bud.
And I've recovered that from a number of different sources. From Corey Fleming, from Corey Fleming's law firm, from the bank, from Chad Westendorf, who was a subsequent PR. And you can presume that I made claims against Alex's law firm. And we'll leave it at that.
Okay.
So I also have a $4.3 million judgment against Alex individually that I expect we will collect some money on based on what the receiver is out there trying to unravel and bring in property that was either in Alex's name or he tried to shelter.
Awesome. Okay, I've got you so far for 65 minutes. You still running good, or you got?
Yeah, you got another 10. I'll give you another 10.
Okay, man, I'm living right there. I'm living right. Let's see here. I always felt it's impossible not hearing shots from the house, dog not alerting strangers, and probably nobody else there. Yep, we totally agree, Megley. Thank you so much. Question, and I'm pulling this one up here. This saga obviously is not over for the Murdaughs. I mean, it's gonna take a little bit longer, but
yeah, I mean, you got all the books coming. You're gonna have movies. You're gonna have a Hulu series. I mean, I once said this, and I don't mean to offend people when I make this statement, but Alex is like venereal disease. He's the gift that keeps on giving.
Okay, if you've just joined us, everybody, this is Eric Bland. He is an extraordinary, intelligent, passionate attorney who's out of the South Carolina, Charleston. He's got an office in Charleston, an office up in Columbia. He's got a podcast called Cup of Justice. If you've not subscribed to it, please get over there and hit that. We got 9,800 people here right now. So we'd love to see 9,800 more subscribers go over there. Also, if you've not hit the like and subscribe button here, that would be greatly appreciated as well. Let's see here. What was your highlight of the trial?
Judge Newman.
Tell me about that.
I think he showed the world, look, that's a minority judge. He showed the world temperament, intelligence, courtesy, a little bit of dry humor. It's a shame that he's 72 years old. I wish we could turn back the clock. Cups up, Sela. She said cups up. That's our slogan. I wish he was 52 years old. He's going to age out. We have a mandatory retirement at 72 years old. And so it's sad that he's going to take senior judge status. But you heard him say, I'm sitting on the other 99 cases and we're going to schedule those pretty quickly. I thought the lawyering was tremendous. I really do. You saw these lawyers grow as people. I mean, Creighton Waters, he and I didn't get along for a long time. I was pushing him hard, saying, you're not pushing these cases hard enough. You could have charged this, and this. And he always told me, he said, patience. And now we're good friends. And just so you know, Creighton had never tweeted before yesterday. He's done
really?
2 tweets, and now he already has 21,000 followers in just 2 days. I mean, he's going to be the nation's lawyer. I mean, he's the nation's prosecutor. So watching Creighton grow, and I represented his father. His father, Sam Waters, was with a really big white shoe law firm, and I helped him with his retirement from that law firm, represented him. And Creighton decided he never wanted to, go in corporate law. He wanted to be a prosecutor, and that's so admirable. Watching Alan Wilson, I have had my disagreements with him, okay? Did not believe he had that kind of skill set. Nobody did. And his direct examination of that expert was amazing. Savannah, the young female prosecutor, she grew in front of our eyes.
Yeah, she did.
The defense made a tremendous mistake in not using Maggie Fox more. She was the blonde female lawyer on the defense side. She is a really good friend of mine. She is highly skilled. And if they utilized her more in that trial, she would have done great. Watching her grow. The thing that's really interesting to me, and I talked about it on all the shows, you could go pay $800 an hour or $1,000 an hour for Henry Lee or Cyril Wecht. But that $100 an hour Dr. Kinsey absolutely smoked that courtroom.
He killed it.
Because he understands our soil. It's like the gladiator when you're about to fight and you take up that soil and you put it in your hand and you feel the soil. Kinsey made a connection. Lawyers, when we're in front of a jury, we have to make a connection. They have to like me. I want to like them. We got to connect. We understand our soil. I don't think a lot of these national experts that came in understood the soil.
No, and it was really interesting in the closing where he said the guy from Connecticut.
Yeah. Yeah, it was good.
Which was, again, to that point, understanding your audience that you're in front of and creating.
Some of the defense's theories got schizophrenic. It was a 5'2" pygmy, a 5'2", 12-year-old pygmy. And then it got to be a 6'4" person who did a contact wound from the head down, when the theory for most of the case was it was a shot up. So it was like they were putting stuff up on the wall and seeing what was going to stick.
Yeah, it was pivoting, just like Alex. I mean, everything that he did was a pivot to, gauging the information coming in, evaluating it, weighing it, and then answering it with a question. And then he would pivot from there. And that's where we got a lot of the I believes, I think, perhaps, maybe. I'm not really sure, but it could be, but perhaps it isn't.
Right. And you notice every time he was unsure, if I said, so Alex, you said you were at your house, and then he would say, is the question whether I was at the house? He would re-ask the question after it was asked to him. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
just to buy himself time. And you kind of saw the way his wheels were spinning in his head. Hey, shit, how do I have to answer this? Do I answer it this way? Because I'm going to get this question this way.
Right. I mean, and I'm sure you caught it in the very first interview in the car. He's looking over at the sled guy like, is he buying this soggy bread that I'm over here? That's what I call this, soggy bread. He's selling soggy bread. And
he was selling it, man.
And
no one was buying it.
Nobody was buying, and the jury didn't buy. And so the last question for you, because I know you've got to bounce, but I'll keep you here as long as you want to stay here, brother. I'm serious. I'm loving it. But
just go ahead.
Okay. What was the low point for you in the trial watching it?
Some of the comments by Harpootlian kind of bothered me. The most thing that bothered me is when he said it was his honor to represent him. That mortally wounded me, because I'm a legal malpractice lawyer, catastrophic injury lawyer, but 30-40% of our practice is lawyers. And if you're saying it's your honor to steal, it's your honor to represent a guy that stole $8 million. I mean, what do you think about your profession? The low point for me was, where does Buster go from here? Because I'm a father and I have a son. I don't see anything other than he changes his name to Fred Reynolds, dyes his hair black, and moves to Montana. I don't, this kid, I don't, how does he have a life? If you and I are in a restaurant in New York City and we're eating lunch and you hear table for 4 for Hitler, we're going to turn our heads to the right, like, who's that?
Right.
And if we're in a table in New York City and you hear table for 4 for Murdaugh, we're going to flip our heads the same way.
Yeah. No,
To me, that was, just the raw, the kid's lost, he's lost.
Did you see those pictures of him that have surfaced, since the trial where he's walking the dogs with his girlfriend?
No.
Oh yeah, he does. He looks like he's just done. He's just beat. And he's a young kid.
He's 26 years old.
Yeah. And you got to think about his girlfriend too, though. She's got to be looking over her shoulder going, hey, does the apple fall far from the tree here? And just, because women.
But she's a lawyer. She's tainted. Do you really want to be associated with that family? He may be a great guy, but is the baggage, is the juice worth the squeeze, right? That's what you're saying. Is the juice worth the squeeze? Yeah.
And John Marvin's going to have to take care of him, but we'll see how all of this is going to fall out in the long run.
Well, there you go.
All right. So here, tradition. You get the final word. I'm going to pull out. And then when you're done, I always like to keep things on a positive, upbeat,
Yeah, I want to thank everybody for.
Yeah, you're getting ahead of me, brother.
Oh, okay.
Hang on there. You're an OG. I know how you roll. Okay, I'm going to pull out of the picture here. You're going to have the last word. Pitch anything you want. Tell everybody about your podcast. You got 10,000 people watching you right now, and when you're done, okay, then I'm going to play a song to Hawaii, and I appreciate you being here, my friend. I'm grateful that your schedule worked out to get you in here.
I'll do it again. I'll do it again for you in a couple of weeks if you want me back on to do a sum up.
Maybe could you get Mark with you too, and have you two? Both?
Yeah, I'll talk to him. I'll talk to him for you.
Okay, hang on, and it's all you.
Hey, I'd like to thank everybody for paying attention and taking an interest in this case. Without the listeners and everybody giving their suggestions to me and to Mandy and Liz Farrell, who are the co-hosts that I do the Cup of Justice with, we gave a tremendous amount of good information to Creighton Wooders. I'm a little bit forlorn right now about, what do we do? I kind of feel numb, and everybody's a little numb. Like we were so interested and riveted. We've almost, put our lives on hold for 6 weeks. Go hug your family. Go back to what you do. Go back to working out. Go back to your dogs. Go back to your garden. Life goes on. Let's put Murdaugh in the wind. Yeah. But now that everybody wants justice, let's fight for justice. Let's fight for justice for Stephen Smith and anybody else in your lives. Let's make sure that, if there's a police brutality situation, we fight for justice. Everybody now, I think, is a lot more educated about the legal system. And if you're going to need a lawyer in your life at different times, I think you're going to be able to ask the right questions. So, I think there's some good sun that can come from this. And Cheryl Crow gave us a shout out, and certainly she talks about the sun and the light and all that. So, be happy, and there'll be good times to come. Thank you. And go to my podcast, Cup of Justice. We release another episode tomorrow, episode 20, and I think you'll enjoy it. Thank you.
Hard working every day, I'm stressed out 24/7, babe. No timeouts, wish we could fly away. You and I go to our favorite place. Oh yeah, make special memories together. I'll be your company now and forever. I say we fly away. You and me go to our favorite place. Feeling the sun on my face in Hawaii. With you, away. Yeah, we're taking away. Don't hesitate now. We're taking away. Yeah, we're taking away. We'll never come down. We're going away. Yeah, we're going away. You and me. Feeling the sun on my face in a while.